The big news, of course, occurred last evening, Thursday night. The Supreme Court, by a unanimous decision, apparently, had to weigh in on the unconstitutional, illegal, violent fucking action taken by Donald Trump against the man, Armando Abrego Garcia. I think his first name was actually Kilmore, Armando Abrego Garcia, who had been snatched up and sent to a prison in El Salvador. No due process, no chance to defend himself, no warrant, no proof, just snatched up and taken away. As far as I'm concerned, this doesn't show the strength of the Supreme Court. It shows the blatant fucking fascist criminality of the Trump administration. Because they felt they could do it. The toilet rat really does believe he has this power. So the Supreme Court last night, told the toilet rat's government to take steps to return this guy that they had just sent away because the bastard Trump felt like it. It was an unsigned order from the court, and the court actually stopped short of ordering the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia, which indicates that courts may not have the power to require the executive branch to do so. The separation of powers was put there by the framers of the Constitution because they never considered that a fascist asshole like Donald Trump would take over the executive branch. So now there's some concern, apparently, within the Supreme Court. Oh, do we have the power to do this? Do we have the power to do that? I thought there were three co-equal branches of government, and it also was my apparent misconception that the courts had the right of review for whatever the Congress did and whatever this particular toilet rat did. Now, the court, what happened was a trial judge had ordered the Trump administration to take steps to return Mr. Abrego Garcia from that prison. But the Supreme Court, in their ruling last night, they endorsed part of the trial judge's order that had required the government to, quote, facilitate and effectuate the return, end quote, of Mr. Abrego Garcia. So the Supreme Court ruling last night said this in part, quote, the order, that was the one from the lower court, the order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. End quote. Supreme. What the fuck? The word effectuate may not have been the proper word used in the lower court, the trial judge who ordered this criminal goddamn gang of Nazis to return the man that they had snatched and sent away with no reason, except this crazy fucker, this beast who runs ICE now, Tom Homan, and his miserable boss, the toilet rat, Donald Trump. They do things like this because not only do they feel they have the power to do so, but this is a direct challenge. You understand this? This is direct challenge to everything constitutional in this country. Everything this toilet rat is doing is pushing the limits of the executive power to see just how far he can go. He wants to go all the way. He doesn't want no fucking court. He's like a Benjamin Netanyahu, who got very pissed off. What was it, 2 years ago, when the Israeli Supreme Court made a decision that Netanyahu could not override what they said by whatever executive order counterpart is in Israel. And Netanyahu lost his shit, and shortly after that, this horror began in Israel, Gaza, Palestine. And, of course, there was talk back then, you don't hear it anymore, that Netanyahu had advance notice that this attack by these Hamas fuckers was going to occur. But he did nothing because he knew, just like Trump knew all last year, Netanyahu knew that his ass was in a vice. And the only way he could pull himself out was to get involved in a horrendous, bloody fucking war, which he has done. So the case, as a result of what the Supreme Court said last night, the case will now return to the trial court. Meanwhile, Mr. Abrego Garcia sits in this fucking torture prison in El Salvador. And El Salvador was the country he fled from because he feared for his life. So the son of a bitch Holman and this rotten bastard Trump, they send him right back to where he fled out of fear for his life. But anyway, the case will now go back to the trial court, that the first court, who had ordered the administration of the toilet rat to bring this guy back. But it's not clear whether or when Mr. Abrego Garcia will be returned to the United States. This is Kafka-esque. If any example of a hapless character in a Kafka novel, here's a guy, Abrego Garcia, who is here on a legal visa for how many years? I forget what it was, 9 years, 8 years, 7, 5, whatever the fuck it was, going about his own business, married to an American, got kids, and all of a sudden he's snatched, charged with nothing that against which he can defend himself, offered no due process, no attorney, no representation, just loaded onto a fucking airplane with 195 or so other hapless individuals and flown to a country he fled because of fear of what might happen to him. Kafka-esque? Are you kidding me? Oh my God. So, in the Supreme Court's ruling last night, here's more of what they said. Quote, the district court should clarify its directive. Because apparently, to the U.S. Supreme Court, the word effectuate has what? A wishy-washy definition? Too many definitions? John Roberts and the Nazis on the court don't understand what the term effectuate means. That means bring it about, make it happen. But the ruling by the court said the district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. Yeah. The Supreme Court went on to say, for its part, the government, that would be the sewer rat, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect for further steps. In other words, what the court is saying to this Nazi son of a bitch, which will be ignored, the Supreme Court wants the toilet rat to share with the court, any court, but especially the Supreme Court, why it arrived at the decision to take this man with no due process, snatch him up, and take him away. And they also want to know, what is your prospect you're going to do this to other people? Well, Your Honor, judges, Supreme Court justices, look, I got my hand up. Okay, listen to me up here in the foothills of the North Georgia mountains. The prospect of further deportations like this? Oh, come on, Supreme Court justices, don't be a fucking assholes, you Nazis. You know this is the playbook for this criminal goddamn administration. And you also know, Supreme Court, 6 of you, you know what unleashed this. Your ruling that Mr. Trump was above the law. All law. Now, the ruling to bring him back appeared to be unanimous. But Justice Sonia Sotomayor, joined by Justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, the 3 rational Supreme Court justices, they issued a statement that was extremely critical of the toilet rat's conduct. And Justice Sotomayor said she would have upheld every part of the trial judge's order. And Sotomayor wrote this, to this, quote, to this day, the government has cited no basis in law for Abrego Garcia's warrantless arrest, his removal to El Salvador, and his confinement in a Salvadoran prison, nor could it, end quote. I mean, that's some powerful shit, what Sotomayor said. Not only has the government cited no basis in law, but they couldn't for what they did to Abrego Garcia. Jesus Christ. And Sotomayor urged the trial judge, Paula Zenas, of the Federal District Court in Maryland, quote, to continue to ensure that the government lives up to its obligations to follow the law. Oh, my God. So there has to be a prompting of this, of course, of this Nazi son of a bitch, this toilet rat. He has to be prompted as somebody in his regime. He's not going to do it, but somebody has to be prompted. Look, you fuckers can do pretty much what you want to do, but you're going to have to follow the law. No, they're not. And they don't have to, because the executive branch is now completely a singular power source in this government. There is no longer an equal division of power among the three branches. Look, folks, I'm not trying to say the sky is falling, but that idea of three co-equal branches has been dissolved. It was dissolved before the orange Nazi got his second term here. It was dissolved when we watched civil and criminal law in this country, federal and state, being shredded by the filthy fucking traitor attorneys who decided to defend Trump and destroy the Constitution. And then when the Supreme Court made its ruling, well, 14th Amendment, Section B doesn't apply to Donald Trump. He planned and operated within an insurrection to overthrow the government. Bah, what the fuck? We'll let him go. And then the second ruling, which said Donald Trump is not subject to the law the way I am, the way you are, the way 350 million of us are. No, he's not subject to it. The central reason that I'm bringing this up right at the beginning of today's podcast is because this action taken against Mr. Abrego Garcia, this is like the canary in the coal mine, the harbinger of the horror that is going to descend on us if this fucking toilet rat it continues to be able to do any goddamn thing he wants to, which his facilitating pissy cabinet seems to just relish in, sitting there on their dumb asses while this guy pontificates about what a great man he is. Hey, listen, and they all sit there and praise him. Every one of them in these cabinet meetings, which is what Trump, that's like heroin injections to a fucking junkie, and Trump just loves it. And he also knows that every one of the people praising him, he could just flick a button and they would disappear. That's power. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. The Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.